how can we take more personal responsibility and be a part of bringing in the changes that we want to see in the world? I want to emphasize the use of the word privilege, because a big part of what I want to share with you today is those of us with privilege, which is all of us in this room, first becoming conscious and aware of the privilege that we have, and also understanding that with that privilege comes a level of responsibility. Now, just outside of these walls, there's over 80,000 children in New Zealand growing up in low-income households and in poverty. This limits them to access to education and many of the lifestyles that you and I live and take for granted in this beautiful country. Just this morning when I opened up the paper, I read an article that every 2 seconds, a woman under the age of 18, a girl really, is sold into marriage and millions more into trafficking and backbreaking labour. Now, I'm not here to talk to you about either of these two things today, but in a way, I am. It's understanding that those of us with this privilege have a responsibility. And that's what we're here to really dive into today with this question of now what. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you today and what privilege and responsibility I had to share the message, as someone who is an entrepreneur and who works with conscious, driven, passionate, inspired women every single day, it was only natural that I would want to share with you about business and pushing our limits and creating everything that we can create in our lives. And when I say these phrases to you, business, profit, money, success, ambition, power, what are some of the images or associations that come up for you when I share that? Maybe it's images similar to this, or feelings that for you to create personal success means less success for others, or that somebody else creating success means less success for you. Or maybe it's that corporate greed or that profit at the sake of all other things. Or images or experiences similar to this. And when I share with you the phrases social activism, social change, humanitarianism, philanthropy, what are some of the associations that come to mind when I share those words? Maybe it's images similar to this, that to create change, you have to put yourself in harm's way. Maybe a sense of anarchy, maybe rebellion. Or maybe it's feeling that to create change has to be something so big and so far-fetching that your simple action won't make a difference. And you'll be forgiven for thinking experiences like this because we've been sold an ideology that personal success, creating and pushing past our own personal limits for our own agenda, is at the expense of the greater good, society, or that to create greater good for society means that our personal success is sacrificed, that these don't go together. And not only do these two go together, but they actually must go together for us to bring in the change that we want to see in this world. Our personal success must be paired with our desire to create an impact for the society and the communities that we're a part of. A level of personal ownership for us to all sit here in this question of now what, and understand that with the privilege that we have to be in this room, with the privilege we have in our day-to-day life, comes a responsibility for us to bring in the world that we want to see. So in a time where there is more opportunity, more ways that we could choose to live our life, more potential for how we can show up in our lives than ever before, any other time in history. I run a multiple six-figure international business traveling the world from a $2,000 laptop. So why is it that we are one of the most medicated, addicted, depressed, isolated generations in history? Something is not adding up. So there's clearly something missing in the way that we're choosing to live our lives and the way that we're utilizing the opportunities that we have available to us. So in the early 1940s, mid-1940s, someone by the name of Abraham Maslow, a psychologist, discovered a theory on human motivation. It's called the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the top level of these needs is something called self-actualization. This is a very well-researched psychologist and theory, not something I'm going to spend a huge amount of time on. But one of the things that he discovered is the need for us as humans to create self-actualization in our lives. So what is self-actualization? Self-actualization can be described essentially as fulfilling one's greatest potential, becoming everything that we can be in this time that we have here, to self-actualize. And I also want to draw attention to one of the examples shown here, the desire to give and or positively transform society. Guys, our desire and our drive to create not just personal success in our life, to self-actualize in our own life, paired with our desire to contribute and grow as a society, must start to go together. About 6 years ago, I attended an event in Australia called Date with Destiny. This is with someone called Tony Robbins. You may have heard of him before. And so he's an entrepreneur and a self-help guru, essentially. And he actually showed me and introduced another need to this hierarchy of needs. This need that I realized was missing in my life, and that for so many of us is this need that we're not meeting, which is why we're ending up addicted and finding our joy and our fulfillment in these places that I showed in a few slides earlier. So that need is the need of contribution. This is one of the human needs that we actually need to meet in our own lives so that we feel fulfilled, excited, and passionate about our own life. We have to start combining our desire for success in our own life with a desire and a willingness to utilize that privilege to contribute to the world in a bigger way. And that can look differently for all of us, but what's on your heart? What is it that you want to contribute? What is it that you want to make a difference to? Because not only is it necessary for you to be contributing there so that we can create the change, but it's so that you can also step into a new level of fulfillment in your own life. So why is self-actualizing and creating success in our own life so important for the now what that we need to see? Creating success in our own life, self-actualizing, growing, expanding, becoming everything that you can be, generates resources. This could be time, energy, money, opportunities, people that you attract into your space. So we have to be able to do that so that we can generate the resources, because the resources allow us to create something called inner sustainability. So inner sustainability is essential so that we can create the impact that we need to create. Again, not just so that we can create the world that we want to see, but so on an individual level, we can start self-actualizing and tapping into that need for contribution, which is going to add levels of fulfillment and excitement and expansion in your own life to create the impact that we need to see. So I want to share with you a little bit about a couple of zones. The first one, as you may be able to tell by this slide here, is something that I call the survival zone. So as you can see, wake up, survive, sleep, repeat, essentially. So for me, this would look like when I was 27, living at home, trying to figure out a business, trying to figure out the next steps in my life. And I remember every single 3 months receiving this letter from the council asking me to register my car. I'm not sure if you guys, anyone who owns a car will get these letters. And I remember every single time getting that letter, opening it up and having a moment with myself, hoping and wishing that the next time I got that letter, I would be able to afford to tick the 12-month box. Because every time it was just the minimum amount. Because I was just trying to survive. I was trying to figure myself out and get out of where I was. So when we're spending time habitually in our survival zone, how much impact can we make? We can barely take care of ourselves in this place, let alone contribute to anything outside of ourselves. So the survival zone is also probably obvious. We're not self-actualizing. We're not living into our greatest potential if we're living in our survival zone. So we have to be committed to moving outside of this space, first for ourselves, and then to start tapping into the needs that we have in a greater way. The next one is our comfort zone. So what is so wrong with our comfort zone? Why do so many of us get stuck here? Is probably a bigger question to ask. Well, it's in the name, right? It's comfortable. For me, this probably looks like earning $1,000 a week at a temp job, working 9 to 5, close to the beach, having some good friends, being able to leave the desk at 5 o'clock and not worry about my job. It's comfortable. Maybe this looks like being able to contribute $50 or $100 to causes that you care about. Surrounded by good friends, maybe you're in a good job. So what inherently is really wrong with staying here? Your good life, right, in your comfort zone, your comfortable, good life is the enemy of your great life. Your good, comfortable life is the enemy of your great life. There is no self-actualization occurring inside of our comfort zone. You guys have all seen those memes, comfort zone and, life starts here or whatever it is, comfort zone. There's so many on our comfort zone, but there is no growth occurring outside in your comfort zone. So your level of self-actualization is not being achieved. And the level that you can contribute is also not really being achieved. So this is why so many of us are medicated, addicted, overeating, over-drinking, because there's something missing. When I was working that 9-to-5 job, I knew that I was meant for more. I knew it. Just like you have that inkling inside telling you, calling you forward, calling you to greater things. It's inside of you, and that is in your comfort zone, and it's beckoning you into the third zone. And I call this one the radically engaged zone. And I've got a picture of myself there. Essentially, that's me in my radically engaged zone. That's an event that I throw called Conscious Boss Clique, which I started 3 years ago to build community amongst female entrepreneurs, to create this collaborative, supportive space, push back against tall poppy and competitive syndrome amongst women in business. I've now had over 27 of these events all around the world with thousands of women attending. And this was an event that I did for the initiative Women's Entrepreneur Day, which is an ambassador that I'm a part of from a New York initiative called Women's Entrepreneur Day. And so this is to empower women in business to alleviate poverty around the world. That's what I radically care about. That's what I lend my voice to. That's me in my radically engaged zone. So what could that look like for you? What do you want to lend your voice to? Because when we start to tap into our radically engaged zone, this is also when we start to attract even more resources towards us. Because when we commit to playing a bigger game, not just for ourselves, but to be a part of something that's bigger than us, to lend our voice and be about something other than us, we generate and attract resources that support us in our own endeavors, our own missions. So why don't more people spend their time here? If it's such a great place to be, why aren't more of us living here? Because it's scary. It's frightening. It's unknown. There's many times where elements of this zone feel a little bit like our survival zone. Because you're in new territory, you're discovering, you're expanding, you're in places you've never been. But just as it's scary, it's also the only place where the levels of fulfillment that you're seeking live. To tap into self-actualization, to tap into contribution, we have to be in this radically engaged zone in our own lives. Now, when we turn on the news, open the paper, any way you guys get our news these days, it's easy to see these headlines and want to put our heads straight in the sand, close it right back up. It's overwhelming. There's so much going on that it's so easy for us to become apathetic and indifferent by the gravity of everything that we see. But the reality is, all of our voices matter. All of our voices matter. Everything that we do makes a difference to the changes that we want to see. But first we have to create our own personal success and move out of our survival zone and commit to living in the radically engaged zone so that we can then lend our voice in a more powerful way to the thing that breaks your heart, the thing that's on your heart to make a difference in. Did you know that in Africa there is a myth or a rumor, call it what you will, that if you have sex with a virgin, you get cured of AIDS? Now, you might wonder how I know that. So I spent a month in Tanzania, Africa last year volunteering with a friend of mine, one of my best friends who set up a charity over there to work with the Tanzanian communities to create clean water wells in these villages, these remote villages that are miles and miles and miles away from anywhere. So not only are these young girls being raped by people in the middle of the night on their walk to water, but they're missing out on their education. Now, it would be very easy to come to these villages to see what they saw and decide, nothing that I do here can make a difference. This is so much bigger than me. How could I help? And not only would I not have been gifted the incredible experience of participating in this 2-mile walk for water when I was followed by a community of African villages and children singing and chanting in gratitude alongside us as they knew that we were drilling a well in their community. The 2-mile village walk outside of the village to pull a bucket of dirty, infected water out of the ground, the water that they drink every day, the water that they miss school to go and collect. Not only would I not have received that experience, but these hundreds and thousands of women, children, and villagers would be living completely different lives if they did not decide to do something about what broke their heart. Did you know that the fashion industry is the second most polluting and toxic industry behind the oil industry for our environment? That was a very, very inconvenient truth when I found that out. I had to second guess when I spent, why I spent, and what on. But it's something that I'm now a really strong advocate for, conscious ethical fashion, and I have become that because I worked with a couple of clients that educated me who were advocating for change within this industry. I share that with you because this is to demonstrate that every single voice matters. Change happens through ripple effects, through passionate people deciding that they want to see something done differently. But it also is inherent that we create personal success and create inner sustainability in our own lives first so that we can make that difference. So again, because there's so much going on, so much that needs to change, it's easy to get overwhelmed and indifferent because it's so big and ask ourselves, how the hell can I make a difference? How can my voice, how can my action make any difference in the world that I see? But you don't need to know the how. You don't need to understand all of the steps that's going to take for you to create the change. Firstly, in your own life, to get self-actualize and build what's ever on your heart from a personal point of view, to build, whether it's the career, whether it's the business, whatever is on your heart to self-actualize in your own life, you don't need to understand the how. And same with the impact that you want to make. You don't know how you're going to end the thing that breaks your heart. But you do need to be willing to play your part because it's breaking your heart for a reason. You're being called to lend your voice to the things you want to activate in society. My favorite quote of all time is by Henry David Thoreau. He says, "We must walk consciously, only part way towards our goal, and then leap into the darkness to our success." So liberate yourself from the how, but be willing to step into the radically engaged zone in your own life, creating personal success for yourself so that you can activate the change that we so desperately need to see in society. So what would it be that you would love to put your energy to? What is it that's on your heart? A really beautiful conversation to have, and I've done this at one of my events before, is actually having a conversation with the person next to you, which I won't do now, but you can do on the break, and asking them, what is it that breaks your heart about the way the world is right now? Because you'll have passionate and beautiful conversations about the things that we need to change, and the awareness shifts when a passionate person shares with you something that's breaking their heart. You'll never be the same again once it's been brought to your attention. And it's the same when you share what breaks your heart with other people. When the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful.